As tensions with China escalate, the big question on many minds is the U.S. ready for a hot war? But is that really the right question? With China ramping up its military strength and employing tactics like unrestricted warfare, the challenge for the U.S. isn't just about being ready for war. We sat down with Michael Sikora, founding director of the Socrates Project in the Reagan White House, to talk about how the U.S. can best prepare and respond to a complex, evolving threat. Mike Sikora, thank you so much for joining us. Great to have you back on the show.
It's always a pleasure.
Now, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth was sending a clear message at a defense summit in Singapore, saying any attempt by Communist China to conquer Taiwan by force will result in devastating consequences for the Indo-Pacific and the world. The threat that China poses is real and could be imminent. He also adds that President Trump has also said that Communist China will not invade Taiwan on his watch. Our goal is to prevent war, to make the cost too high, and peace is the only option. Given all of that, is the U.S. ready for a hot war with China?
The bottom line is, it will not go hot until China strongly believes that they will win. Okay, so they'll continue to dance around with trade agreements and all these other things until they know they can win. Now, how will they know? Well, we're pretty infiltrated in this country with Chinese operatives. Their spy networks are unbelievable. As we know, they've bought land around so many of the military bases. They're intercepting. We've had the balloons, so they keep very tight track on exactly our war preparations, including one of the things we addressed before was the cranes. So their cranes are actually looking at what's being brought in, what's being moved around to the bases, along with all the drone data they have. Because remember, they own most of the drones in the United States are owned by China. Okay, they come from China. And the data that comes out of that drones, thanks to China, they said, store it here. You can get cheap storage. So they got all this data. They're tracking this very tightly. So the bottom line is, the question isn't should we, will we be ready when the hot war goes? And when will it be? But rather the question is, what can we do to prevent China from getting to the point that they will be ready to have a hot war? Okay. So the real thing that we have to address, we have to debate, is how is it that China was able to continue to increase their competitive advantage relative to the United States for decades and continue to increase their competitive advantage unabated by anything that we're doing?
As you were pointing out there, China employs its unrestricted warfare or everything short of kinetic war. So besides the military buildup, of course, as you're mentioning, TikTok, psychological warfare, information warfare, lawfare, drug warfare with fentanyl, all these different aspects of basically destroying the enemy from within without even having to fire that shot. Given Communist China's strategy here, how should the U.S. be responding or, countering this?
Well, if you look at it, and Xi Jinping has said this repeatedly, it's every speech just about technology exploitation is the foundation of a country's strength and growth. Okay, so if you look at the various aspects of China's national strategy, it is technology-based. So the only way to counter that is with a more effective technology strategy. Okay, now, it's extremely important to differentiate, because somebody say, we got the CHIPS Act. No, that's not a technology strategy. That's a finance strategy for technology, which means we're just trying to outspend them. How effectively you exploit the technology dictates how much money you need to spend in order to generate that competitive advantage. So the only way to counter China's national strategy, which, as you said, is all of government, all competitive environments in a unified fashion, the only way to counter that is to counter the foundation, which is the technology exploitation. So the only way to counter China is with a more effective national technology strategy.
What would that technology-focused strategy be in the U.S.?
So as we have pushed ever since Reagan is to reestablish the Socrates program. 3 pieces of legislation has been passed, put on the shelf, but Socrates allows us to exploit technology, a national technology strategy, which is totally in line with the democratic principles of the United States, which would allow us to totally outmaneuver China's national technology strategy at will. That's what we did with the Soviet Union. We can do the same thing with China.
Mike Sikora, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.